Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I've got a first impressions to do for you. I skipped the unboxing on this knife because I went and picked this knife up in person from the buddy of mine who sold it to me, my friend Kyle, who I have been in a long time knife chat with, decided to sell this knife. And it is a knife that was first owned by another one of our mutual friends, and then was owned by Kyle. It's been well taken care of. And in our group chat, we have affectionately referred to this knife since our first buddy got his when the knife first came out. We have affectionately referred to it as the Danger Banana. So, introducing the Danger Banana. This is, for those of you who are not already aware, the Spyderco Subvert. This is a knife that I have thought is so cool and so impractical for a very long time, and I have kind of wanted one, kind of laughed at them, but I'd never even held one. And so when the opportunity arose, it was kind of a no-brainer. I just wanted to experience this knife, and lately I've been on a kick of enjoying big, overbuilt folders, and this is certainly a big, overbuilt folder. I would suppose that this could technically be called a liner lock, seeing as the titanium lock bar does ride under this bright orange scale. But these liners, if you want to call them that, are as thick as many frame locks. So this knife is intensely thick. Not just are the liners pretty thick, the G10 is fairly thick, and the blade is thick. All the components of this knife are thick, and what that translates to is a very, very thick handle profile. That makes it kind of a brick in pocket, although it carries better than I would have thought it would. I carried it last night on my walk with the family. I carried it out here today, and this knife is just, it's thick, but it's really well rounded, and it feels kind of like you've got a banana in your pocket. Either that or you're just excited to see whoever it is you're encountering. It's kind of silly, but it's really fun. Now, the thing that has struck me the most about this knife since first getting it is how much fun it is to play with. This knife, the action is just a great Spyderco Tai-Chung bearing action, and it feels really, really fun. It's not as like drop shutty, not as much of a guillotine as my Paysan was. Definitely feels different from that. But with this massive slab of S30V, it just kind of, it does like to fall all the way shut with little resistance. I have not adjusted this knife or anything, so I don't know, maybe you could get it even more drop shutty. I haven't oiled it, nothing. But this knife is pretty well broken in from the two owners before me playing with it quite a bit. And yeah, it's really, really fun to play with. It's great to thumb flick, and it is great to Spidey flick. Those are your two options. I guess you could do the old kind of drop thing. I don't really open Spydercos that way. You could do your pointer finger flick. You can do all kinds of like the typical Spidey hole opening methods, and holes are better than studs. Yeah, so I guess real quick, this is just going to kind of be my intro to the knife. I'll do a full review once I've done some more carrying, and once I've actually done some cutting with it. I haven't really cut, I don't think, anything with this yet. It's very new to me, but let's kind of walk through it. So we've got an S30V blade. It's just over 4 inches long, and you can tell the second you fling this thing open, the blade is just, it's like the wow factor of the knife. It's ground in a really unique way. It's a flat grind to the top. You come all the way to the spine here. There's a little bit of a flat up in this section here. But just running my fingers over this grind, the shaping of it feels really kind of unique. Like up towards the tip, you can feel it almost gets like there's a thick spot right here, and then it droops back down. Because of this blade shape, it's just very different, very unique from anything else I've ever owned. It's not a Tanto. It's kind of shaped a little bit like a tanto though, with some recurve, and instead of like an angled tanto, it's got the belly. I don't know what you would call this. I guess a drop point, but that's the most intense belly I've ever had on any knife, folding or non-folding. The radius there, oh, it's buggy today, that radius is just intense. Usually I find that I'm not crazy in actual cutting tasks about having really kind of abrupt belly like I usually refer to it. So we'll see how this actually does in terms of real cutting application. Recurve I like to cut with, I find, but I don't particularly like to resharpen. So we'll see how that does as well. This is S30V, so it's going to have pretty good edge retention. I'm not worried about going through this edge all that frequently to the point where sharpening this is much of a concern. But S30V is certainly not the king of edge retention, far from it these days. So yeah, something to be considered is, at least in my experience, recurves tend to be a little bit trickier to sharpen. I imagine the combination between this recurve and that belly would be just it's going to be a doozy to sharpen when that time comes. But yeah, so let's move on. Like I said, these liners are essentially a frame lock with scales on top of them. They're really, really thick. They are skeletonized just a little bit on the inside. We've got a couple of holes drilled for, I assume, weight reduction, balance, etc. The knife is, I would call it a little bit handle heavy, although the center is not that far back. It feels pretty good. It's fairly neutral in hand. But yeah, so we've got nice thick titanium liners, and then we've got G10 that's thick in some spots. You can see here at the butt of the knife it's thick, but out here I guess it's like contoured in a way that it looks thin in some areas. It gets thin down here, but then it's thick again here and here. It's shaped really well. The way they've milled it is not like a typical checkered Spyderco milled G10. It feels much smoother than that to me. I'm finding that I like the way that Taichung does G10. I think this is only my second knife, this and the Tough, that I've had G10 on them from Taichung. It's not like PM2 or Para 3 G10, which is like sandpapery. This isn't at all that type of texture, and it's really cool the way it's milled too, in kind of a 3D pattern. I don't know if the lighting will pick this up, but it almost looks like wood grain. You can see the layers of the G10 a little bit, and it comes across really well. The pocket clip is unique to this knife. It doesn't share the same hole pattern as other Spydercos. Goodness. But I find it works better than I was anticipating it working. It functions just like a regular factory spoon clip. It's just a different hole pattern, and aesthetically I think it looks fine on the knife. I'm not itching to change this clip. I imagine a deep carry clip on this knife might actually make it like bottom out in my pockets to where I couldn't get my pants all the way up in the clip, just because it's such a long knife. This handle is massive. It's got to be, I don't know, in the ballpark of 5 inches. And in terms of actual ergos though, obviously big knives, I'm finding it's uncommon for a big knife to have bad ergos, because you've got a lot of space to work with and make things comfortable. And when you're not focused on making a knife tiny, it's easier to shape things. And this is good. It feels really, really nice. Do I think it's perfect? No, it's a little bit blocky. It's a little bit thicker than I need for my hands. I would frankly prefer this knife to be a lot slimmer. I think it would feel better, but it's in no way uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like it's going to slip out of my hand. It feels very locked in, especially in this kind of primary position. It does have a spot up here where you can choke up, and that feels comfortable as well. So that'll work. Way back here, it does swell super nicely, so I could get 3 fingers on here, hang my pinky off, and I imagine with this shape, this thing almost seems destined to be like a crazy good folding chopper, with that kind of swell out there towards the tip and these ergos. I imagine chopping with this would feel really, really excellent. Time will tell on that one, but yeah, overall, this knife is just ridiculous in a really fun way. It's super fun to fidget with, play with. Lock bar access is great, so not only is it fun to deploy, but it's very nice and smooth to close. Not sure what's happening with my throat right now. I'm gonna have to drink some of my mate after I film this. Anyways, yeah, this thing is, it's a danger banana. It's as crazy as it sounds, and it should be. I think this knife is fun and different and unique, and with my lifestyle lately, this knife kind of actually makes sense for me to have and use and carry for the first time basically ever. I would never have carried this knife a year or two ago. It just wouldn't have made it in pocket. I would have thought it was ridiculously huge, and yeah, it just wouldn't have gotten carried. It might have been fun for me. It's not that I would have despised owning this knife. There's a motorcycle. Anywho, is he gone? Might have been too. So, what was I saying? The Danger Banana. It's cool. It's different. It's funky. I'm really excited to kind of see what it's made of and do a little bit of testing on this knife. I don't know how rough I'm realistically going to be on this knife. Just because it is just because it is a little bit pretty, and I don't know, we'll see. I imagine once I start using it, that'll kind of be the test of whether I want to keep beating on it or not. And if I do keep beating on it, I probably will change the color of these scales, either by RIT dyeing them myself, maybe like a brown or just black, something more neutral, or I may look into having some custom scales made for it, or finding some that already exist and buying some custom scales for it. We'll see. But on first impressions, this knife is more enjoyable than I even expected it to be. I expected to think there was like a lot of cool factor in it, and there totally is. But it feels a lot more functional and usable now that I have it in hand than I assumed it would be before ever handling one. So yeah, I guess that'll be that on the Black Snow Customs collaboration with Spyderco Subvert. Yeah, I got that right? Yeah, the Subvert. Don't make me question myself. There it is.